All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully, you guys kicked butt at the challenge last week. This week, we have got a really, really cool guest that's coming on, and we'll do a real short review of the week type thing. So, as I released a podcast this morning, an hour later, I get a message from Corey. So, Corey says, got to listen to your girl dad pod. You're kicking butt, buddy. Nice. Glad to hear I'm doing most things right with my girls. Congrats. Glad you're doing well. So great to hear from you, Corey. And thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the second it got released to the end, like your text message was like an hour after I released it. So in order for you to have listened to the whole thing, you had to jump on it immediately when it got served up to you when you're following the podcast, they message you on your phone and that type thing. So that was really, really cool, Corey. And now let's jump over to our guest of the week. So this week we have got a guy that I was introduced to just before COVID. And the reason why I know is just before COVID is because we met in person. So couldn't have happened had we got introduced during COVID, at least at the beginning of it. So our guest is Tom Twellman. Tom is the president and CEO of a really cool business called Hair Saloon for Men. So, Tom, welcome to Journey of a Christian Dad podcast.
Dan, I appreciate it, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man, it's so good to have you. So, you may or may not know this, but you were on the original list of guys that I wanted to have come on the show.
Yeah, when you sent me the invite, I actually was going through some memories, and I do remember. I think it was actually during COVID. I think you and I had a conversation, and you asked me at that point to or invited me, kind of whatever it was, and yeah, I'm glad to finally get this chance to sit down with you. And like I said, I've been watching you and watching what's going on with what you've got going on with the podcast and everything you're doing, and it's pretty fantastic. So great job on the journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate that a bunch. That was funny. That may have been one of those, hey, you should come on sometime. Oh, that'd
Yeah,
be great. I'd love to. Yeah, let's reconnect and
yeah,
schedule
yeah,
something.
yep.
In about 3 years, we'll get something scheduled.
Right. Life gets in the way, that's how it works, right?
Yep, absolutely. But we've stayed connected since that time. And so, guys, the Hair Saloon, for those of you guys that aren't familiar with the business, there's 17 different locations. When I originally heard the concept and heard it was going to come out, I didn't know the Twellman family, and I didn't know the Leahy family either. All I did know was that Pat Leahy, I believe, Hall of Fame kicker in the NFL.
That's right. That's correct.
And I was like, dude, Pat's behind this, and this concept sounds super cool. Kind of a bar that cuts hair and community, and like it's for men, like hair saloon for men. Like I dig this. And back then, you could get your shoes shined, and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to go over or not go over. However, the concept sounds awesome, and if I remember right, the original location was in Baldwin. Not that that matters, but I'm like,
Yep.
seems like they did market research to put the original one in a place that could thrive. I'm like,
Yep.
I'm behind this. I hope this thing works out. So 26 years later, we got
26 years and
17
counting.
locations.
Yep.
And
So it's so yeah, as to kind of expand on that a little bit, so it was my dad started the concept in 97, and it was a personal frustration of his of barbershops at that time were kind of closing shop. Barbers were retiring, coming of age of where they had to either pass it on to another barber, up and coming barber, or kind of close up. And at that time, barbers weren't coming out of schools, barber schools, like they kind of are again today. We've seen a resurgence of that in the last few years, which has been fantastic. But at that time, it was barbershops were closing. So what did the men that were relying on those barbershops, what were they to do? It was the industry tried to fill it with that unisex approach. And I love my dad's quote. He's like, I don't know about you or me, but I'm not a unisex. I'm a man. I need a place of my own. So it was that personal frustration of going into one of those shops and sitting in the chair in the window, just waiting his turn and not knowing who was gonna cut his hair or what he was gonna look like coming out. So he wanted to create a place that men felt comfortable. it's a wholesome place. It's not, when people think of men and what they love, it's not the sex and the looks and everything. It's the wholesome environment and the comfortable atmosphere. So, it's a warm, inviting environment, as you kind of explained a little bit. Um, and
Yes,
how can
20
we, how can,
26 years ago, I could have cared less about the wholesome environment as
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
concept was getting rolled out. 26
right.
years ago, that really didn't matter to me. I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah. So
cool.
yeah,
Like the bar atmosphere, this would be great. And
yep,
then now, years later, with children,
yep,
and I actually take my daughters to the hair
yep,
salon with me.
yep,
They're not getting their hair cut at the hair salon. However, like, Dad, why would I go get your haircut with you?
right.
I was like, it's just kind of cool. It doesn't take that long for me to get my haircut, but like I think you'll like it.
Well,
And
that's one thing that we've definitely realized. I mean, I think life speeds up, and especially when you have kids, right? And that's something my dad always talked about. He raised 8 kids. I've got 7 siblings.
get out of here.
So it he can attest to that, better than anybody, of how fast time goes. And myself having 2 boys, it speeds up. So what I love about Hair Saloon is the opportunity that, dads like you with daughters, dads with sons, we encourage that father son visit. Come in. We've got checker tables. So we love seeing those dads sitting down with their boys and playing a game of checkers. And we've got some great images of dads with their daughters kind of doing the same thing, right? I mean, we encourage, um, you know, all the family to come in. Moms are some of our biggest fans. Moms with their boys coming in and
Hmm.
playing a game of checkers and having a good conversation. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and it's with kids and sports and everything. I mean, really the only quiet one-on-one time that maybe we get, with our kids a lot these days, are driving to practice or driving to school. Those 10-minute car rides or 30-minute car rides. Well, Hair Saloon, I think, can provide that, another opportunity, where it's a 20 to 30-minute visit, sit down, play a game of checkers, have a great conversation, have a little competition, a little fun, and then feel good coming out, getting your hair cut, chin a little higher, ready to take on whatever the world, comes at with you. So yeah, so it's been fun. I mean, 26 years, the world's changed for sure. But I think my dad, like I said, when he started the concept, it was that frustration with the haircut industry. But the mission that we've had since day one has been, the restoration of men. We have our mission statement, our credo is, Hair Saloon's filling a void in American life that has as much to do with the restoration of men as it does with the business of hair cutting. So he saw that, society and TV shows and magazines, the content that was being created for men didn't do them any justice. Didn't respect them, didn't kind of treated them like a sideshow Bob kind of character, or just a bumbling, guy sitting on a couch drinking a beer. But my dad believes in, he's a very faithful guy. He believes men are the leaders, leaders in the family, leaders in the community. So how can we, as a brand, as a company, encourage that and be a resource for men? I think that's something that we continue to try to drive every day. So every day that we're open, every time clients walk through the door, yeah, it's a haircut. It's an errand that people are checking off, but it's an experience that they can come in, disconnect from the world, have a seat in the chair for 20 minutes. We call it a retreat. Have a great conversation with their PhD, is what we call our service providers. And so we have them, kind of disconnect. And then, like I said, when they're walking out the door, they might have walked in a little, the chin a little lower, their shoulders maybe kind of hunched over, but when they
Yep.
walk out, their chin's a little higher, and they feel ready to kind of take on what they need to when they go out and take on their responsibilities. So
So guys that have never experienced like a fantastic haircut experience, I'll recap a few over my career. So I was in the military, so I was in the army. I got sent overseas. It was, a male dominated environment. and specifically in Hungary, the country of Hungary. We were in a tent city, so not tons of entertainment, not tons of distraction. Like we're all kind of hunkered down in the same. In the winter, it was super cold, and when it got hot, it was super hot. Uh, but we had a haircut tent, and the native Hungarian women cut our hair. We had to pay for it, but
Yeah.
you know, like there's only one place you could get your hair cut. And after we were there a little while, one, none of us really cared about how long our hair was for the most part. We were all around dudes and whatever. But after we were there a few weeks, somebody says, "Hey, there's a haircut place, here." I'm like, "I don't care." And they're like, "No, no, no. Like, you should care." I'm like, "Why?" It's like the ladies are so nice. They speak Hungarian, but they speak English, and like they talk to you and they're interested in, why we're here and how, we view the country. And like, no kidding. So sure enough, get the cut, and they get the razor out, and they do your neck and take care of you and all that. And I was like, no way, this is cool. They threw a little talc powder on your neck, and
Oh yeah.
use the little brush. And I'm like, when I first time I went to hair salon, I'm like, dude, this is just like that. This is super, super cool. And yeah, you feel, like somebody cared about you. You feel connected. You feel a little bit more confident. You feel a little bit more ready to take on whatever the next thing is.
Yep.
And you just have just a different outlook, and it's so cool. I tried the barber experience, and
Yep.
I was like, unfortunately, the one barber that I knew, as you mentioned, it faded a lot,
Yeah.
and he wasn't any good
Yeah. Yeah.
at cutting hair.
That's what it's all about.
I
Yeah,
kept
it's
going
got to be a
back to
great
get a
haircut,
bad
right?
haircut because of the experience, but
Yeah.
he was not good at his job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He knew how to do
It's
one
yeah, and
size fits
that's what
all
I
on
mean.
his
That's what I love about
haircuts.
what we do too. It's the human experience, right? I mean, it's one-to-one relationships, conversations. I will admit we are human, and mistakes happen, but our training around that is, you just got to be humble enough to admit it and try to make it right. But yeah, it's I think about this all the time. This kind of theme of connectivity that the barbershop has always had. And I think the opportunity that we have to continue to be that conduit, that barbershops, back in the days, it was, Saturday morning hangouts, father sons, maybe a Playboy on the counter, or on the coffee table as you wait. It was men cutting men's hair, great conversations, great relationships built, political, religious, all those things that happen. Um, but over time that's changed. But I think in the end, we still have that opportunity, and as an industry, and also as a brand and a business, is how do we continue to create that connectivity with people. And today's world, we always say we're more connected than ever, but in reality we're probably more lonely than ever.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
we can talk on the phone, and we can get on video chats, and do all these things remotely, but I think that's what the experience that in my opinion, the experience that we provide is that opportunity to have some good conversations and build those long-term relationships. I mean, you talk about 26 years. We've had employees that have been with us for 26 years, that have been working behind the chair for us. That's really unheard of in our industry.
for sure.
Um, and that's something that my dad, I mean, it's all the credit to what he's built. But we've also had clients that have been with us for 26 years, and that's, I can't express enough gratitude for that support. So it's pretty awesome. You mentioned, president and CEO. I mean, I still find it weird that I have that title, but my
I'm glad you
dad's kind
brought that
of.
up. I wanted to get into that right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
actually.
yeah. So he's been in the business
So
since,
you just got promoted. Like this
I just
just
got
happened.
promoted, yeah, about officially about 4 months ago. But I've been working with my dad for about 10 years now, and I've learned all the ins and outs of the business, and I continue to learn and will continue to learn as I go forward. But My dad was he was an entrepreneur. He was self-made, never worked for anybody in his life except for maybe right out of college, and figured out he didn't want to do that anymore. So as I mentioned, raising 8 kids, and working, working his own business and building a brand like this. I mean, holy moly. I mean, what a hero. I mean, I look up to him, and it's pretty amazing. And I'm honored to be able to step into his shoes. And, I'm not going to be able to fill them, but I'm going to do my darndest. But my role now is just going to be, how do we continue, and how do we grow 26 more years from now? So taking that second generation business and family business, and the responsibility on my shoulders. I mean, that's a lot, but I'm confident that I've got people and family and friends, and Dan, you being one of them. I mean, to be able to, anytime I need support or reach out, is I've got, hopefully the community around me to have my back. So, yeah, so it's exciting. It's going to be fun.
So there's something we talked about before we jumped on, and you're like, I didn't write your exact words down, so
Sure.
this is a total paraphrase, and correct me if I'm off at all, but a little intimidated to step into the title, the role, the official all the way leader. The gauntlet's been passed. I didn't realize the 7 siblings, so
Yeah.
you kind of became the favored son, if you will.
Nah, we joke around that favorite son's in Kansas City. That's the internal joke of the family. But no, yeah. I mean, being the oldest son, being Tom Jr., so kind of having my dad's name. I mean, there a lot of responsibility comes on that as well. But I've got some great brothers and great family that when this officially, we had the conversations, we had those I say hard conversations because it's honest and open, that vulnerability that we had to have as a family of, mom and dad aren't going to be around, forever. He's still a young, vibrant, 70, I don't want to age him, but maybe mid 70s. So he's still a young guy, but you never know, right? Tomorrow's not promised. So live for today. Right. So yeah, so having those conversations with the siblings, and everybody was on board. Everybody said, hey, anytime you need anything, who we can, where you can come. So that they've got my back. So yeah, so I'm not on this road on my own, and I've come to realize that for sure. And just like my dad, I think he realized that early on too. You mentioned Pat Leahy, and he's had a lot of great business partners along the way. But now it's a family business now. So, we're going to continue to, and I say family, and that's extended family, that's 26-year employees at the corporate level to store level, franchisees that have been with us since probably 20 years now, 20 plus years now. So we've got a great community, a great, as I said, family that I can lean on, whenever I need it. So yeah, so it's cool. And and I don't remember if we touched on this earlier, but the world's changed for sure since '97. So for me, I think the challenge is going to be, especially with and for me, especially thinking through the last 4 years, is the world's changed, the society culture has changed. I don't think that changes the direction that we go, but there's a lot of unease in the economy and the world right now that yeah, what do you go, what are the right decisions, what do we do with all it's just
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a lot of
And we
unease in
talked
that, right?
as you guys navigated COVID,
Yeah, right. So
and one day we were talking and you're like, dude, I got to jump on this call. Like, this one's an emergency call.
yeah, yeah,
I'm like, where is the emergency haircutting phone call? However, during that time, I'm like, I get it.
yeah,
Like,
yep. So yeah, so it's just but I think it's for me, we can only control what we can control, and there's a lot of and I think in our faith too, there's a great C.S. Lewis quote that a friend shared with me during COVID, And again, it's a very long quote, but basically the gist of it was, as Catholics and as Christians, with the world around us, he wrote it around the world, around the world wars, and with nuclear bombs and the atomic bombs and everything, that there's a lot of unease in the world. And yeah, you can, when there's pandemics and sicknesses and all these things happening, but as Catholics and Christians, I think we're called to live joyously, and love our families, and eat and drink and be merry. I mean, it's kind of that approach, right? So again, paraphrased it, didn't say it as well as he did, but basically there's things out of our control that we kind of have to let God be in charge. And yeah, we might suffer a little bit, but we have to know that I think our mission and our journey in life is will come out more faithful and better, if we can have that trust and that faith in God's plan. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. You're talking about restoration and how things are changing again and,
yeah,
all this. So back in 97, I don't know that there was all that much information out there, or men doing much to help other dads step up and
right,
lead families and, become that pillar of, the family, or pillar of society, or, even the barbershop. There just wasn't a place for guys to do things productive. The
yeah,
bar was there, so there was a
yeah,
place for us to go, but that I would argue isn't the place where we should make our hub of our life. Like,
right,
there's a
right,
different place. So like for an example, the Dad Edge podcast that's out there used to be the Good Dad Project. Larry Hagner started that years ago, and now that's huge. And
yeah,
guys, you say, "Hey, man, I'm looking to be a better dad," to one of your buddies, and one of your buddies like, "Dude, me too. I've been checking out the Journey of a Christian Dad, or I've been checking out Dad Tired, or I've been, all these podcasts are out there these days. Manlyhood Journey, Man Up,
mhm,
all this stuff, all this information's there, and you're like, dude, yeah, I heard that episode. Or, you
yep,
know, somebody throw you a podcast like, dude, I just listened to this one a little while ago that relates to what you're going through.
yeah,
Before the show, you were talking uh, about stepping into the leadership, and I was thinking on my drive in to record about John Maxwell and the law of the lid. So we're only going to go up as high as our personal development allows us to go up. So our mindset, I was thinking about this guy who used to play Major League Baseball. He was an outfielder. And I said, what'd you think about your career and everything? He's like, looking back, I wish I had a better mental mindset. I'm
yeah,
like, why? It's like, I'd have had a much longer career. I only lasted 4.5 years. Not only could I have lasted longer, but my statistics would have been better. I'd have performed better. As the whole time I was there, I didn't feel like I belonged.
hmm,
Looking back, I clearly belonged. I was
yeah,
a really good player, but mentally I had a lid, and I couldn't get past the fact when I'm standing next to MVP players on my team. Like, I'm not that guy.
yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm less than, which, is true. Like, there's only one MVP for each
right,
league.
right,
But
right,
and he played with one of them. He played with one of the all-time home run kings, but he was measuring that guy's particular skill against his skill. His skill wasn't home runs.
yep, yep,
He had a lot of other skill. And he's like, that was it. If I could have just got the mindset right and know that I belonged at that level and that I could thrive at that level. He goes, but in the back of my mind, that voice was always telling me that you're not good enough. You're not going to last. You're going to get cut.
yeah,
You're going to get hurt. Things are not going to go right anymore. And I'm like, how in the heck did he go that far in life, through all
mhm,
the different levels of sport to get all the way there? And then ultimately, he feels like it was his mind that got him cut and didn't get him the next contract. It wasn't his ability. It was
yeah.
his own limitations on himself. And um, yeah, so that
It's funny. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you're talking about, and I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day about this, that yeah, there's a ton of great content out there, and I, for us as a brand, we do our best to create our own, but also share what what we can. Larry Hagner, I'm kind of I'm very familiar with. I've met him a few times too, and great dude and great content. What you've got going on too is fantastic stuff. I think as men, it's great to have these kind of communities that are starting to be built around, and the content that's out there that we can kind of rely on when we need to maybe look for some help. That's what I feel like as part of a reignition of our mission as a barbershop and as a brand is, we have the opportunity to not only do that, virtually and through all the other content creation platforms that are out there, but we've got an opportunity every month when these guys come in for a haircut and in person, to make an impact as well, right? So I think that for me, that's where my sights are right now is kind of looking forward to building that vision of how we do that. But in reality, so like I said, I was talking to a friend of mine about this too, that a lot of this leadership content that you're seeing out there, there's such a faith component to it. You could almost align everything that's talked about in some of those circles with what the Bible says, and I'm not
Mhm.
gonna sit here and, I'm not an expert on the Bible, nor will I be able to point out a verse that where that is true. But the values, the virtues, the skill sets, all of those things that I mean, that's what, our Lord and Savior has taught us, right, in that book and God's word. So I think that's great, and I think, maybe our job as, as Catholics and as Christians is how do we make that more evident,
Yeah. Yeah.
and be more confident and kind of putting our feet in the ground and standing up and kind of being a voice, especially in today's world and culture. You got to stand up for what's right. And, yeah, it's gonna, like I said, there's gonna be suffering and maybe some personal, things that you have, some consequences that you're gonna have to deal with at that point. But I think in the end, our job here on earth isn't to make people happy here on earth. It's to, it's looking up and trying to get into the heavenly gates, so and as fathers and dads, it's my dad, I don't know if he stole it from somewhere, but he always said the one thing that you can take from earth are your kids, to heaven, right? So you can't take anything else. So he's done a great job of, like I said, being an entrepreneur, self-made. We all went to Catholic schools, Catholic private high schools. We all went to, we're all college graduates. I mean, just the amount of work that he put into that, taking us to church every Sunday, doing his darndest to show us the way. I think, and then we've also had, I mean, like I said, I've got 5 sisters. So, 5 brother-in-laws that we had 2, maybe 3 of them convert, before they got married. So my dad's, he's increasing numbers up there. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
so I think, no, not only on earth has he been an accomplished guy, and he'll be the most humble guy, and probably he'll say, he wishes he could have done better, like you were saying about the pro ball player. But I think in the end, you got to realize that it's bigger than that, So yeah, we might have some earthly rewards here, but in the end, I think we got to remember that we're just here for a short period of time. We're
I
looking
got
at.
challenged a while back with, this is years and years ago, but
Yep.
if my mission is to get to heaven and, help those, especially those closest to me, get there
Yep.
and spread the word the best I can, what's my system? I've got the
Right.
business system that's doing well, but then what am I doing over here? And
Yep.
then I got challenged to do the podcast. And on the podcast, I like, let me do a little bit of research, see what else is out there. I could find 2 podcasts dedicated to helping guys be better Christian dads. 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was just 3 years ago. 2.
Yeah.
There's more now, but that was all I could find when I did a Google search. I had to look and look and look. And
Yep.
I'm like, this is disappointing. This is disappointing. And yeah, Von Kohler connected us. He wrote the book Sacred Drive. He's been on the show before. And I love the way he simply explains, there's excellence that we're called to be. So we're called to step into our gifts that God gave us and to do our best. So we got to work like it depends all on us.
Yep.
And then we got to pray like it all depends on God.
Yeah.
And then we put the two together in a humble way and strive for excellence. And people come to us and see us being the light, see us having that joy. And then, it ripples out from there. So we don't all have to be podcasters. We don't all have to be book authors. We don't all have to own a community center that happens to cut hair and spreads the good news.
Yep.
However, we all have our unique things. I was meeting with a mechanic shop owner the other day, and he says, I'm never going to get behind a microphone because I just,
Never say
humbly
never.
lead. Right.
Yeah.
He says, I just humbly lead, at my workplace. And then I show up at church. And when the
Yep.
pastor says something that's maybe a little watered down, that's what my job is. My
Yep.
job is to pull them aside or have lunch with them and say, hey, by the way, I was a little weak sauce, brother.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
No, yeah. I mean, it's yeah.
So
I
that's
think
why as men, we got to go to church. We got to go to church. So if they're
Yeah.
throwing some weak sauce out there or something that, you disagree with, go back to the Bible. Is this the Bible way or not the Bible way?
Well,
Hey,
like
pastor,
you said,
help me understand what you were doing there.
yeah. Well, and like you said, it's having those conversations.
Are we
Yeah.
preaching to the women? Are we preaching to the men? Are we preaching to the unisex?
Right.
We've got men and women in the pews. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So what you're exactly talking about. I mean, I think, there's a quote, again, I'll paraphrase Mother Teresa, but if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. I mean, that can't be any more.
And I love her
simple.
other one. If you can't help 100, help one.
Yeah.
And start with the one closest to you.
Right. So, speaking of the mechanic, I mean, just doing what he does day in and day out and, at work, but also, at home is the ripple effects that can have on his kids and his employees and then their employees and their families. I mean, that's where I kind of look at, what we're doing and, our mission and really kind of diving into if we can help one man that comes into our saloon or if I can humbly lead one employee, to a better decision, the effect of that, the factors of that is just exponential. You help fix that one man, he goes home and treats his family a little better. He goes to work and treats his employees or his team a little better, or his coworkers a little better. You fix a man, you fix a neighborhood, you fix a community, you fix the world, right? So we might not be a part of that, but I think just having that, like we were talking about earlier, we can only control what we can control. So how can we live a better life, be an example to others, loving our neighbors as we would ourselves, the golden rule, right? So I think those are all things that simply we can do. And Vaughn Kohler, you mentioned him. I mean, Andy Frisilla, I think, a good business partner of his, that, a guy that I listen to quite a bit as well. I think he talks about, the greatest or personal excellence is the most honorable rebellion, or I forget exactly the term, but it's funny because one of our terms is honorable rebellion among men, and the key word being honorable. It's not about, being a rebel and causing a ruckus and causing chaos. It's about, taking the responsibilities that you have in life and living them and achieving them or attacking them to the fullest of your ability, so, and doing it with honor, doing it with some humbleness too. So, I mean, I think it's all, as we were talking earlier, it's a lot of things that we're hearing as men and content and everything that's out there today. I really feel there's that faith little tinge and component in there that hopefully it maybe brings more men to the faith, in the end. So
you're talking about control what we can control.
Yep.
Often in the podcast, I talk about how things we learn at work, we can use at home. Things we learn at home, we can use at work. Things we learn out with our buddies, wherever we are, we can bring back to our kids. So the things we learn when we think about all the different areas of life where we can apply them, marriage would be an area. Control what we can control. Right. Can we control our wives? Absolutely not. Can we control our thoughts about our wives? Absolutely so.
Yep.
Um, so so here's a quick little funny thing. We don't need to stay here, but we'll come back. But uh, so a question I saw today, there was an influencer out there talking, happens to be Christian, and he says, "Here's a key question you've got to answer, men. Is your wife ugly?"
Uh,
Which is hilarious that this guy in
yeah.
his situation in life would throw this out to his audience. But it's a thought that I've had actually quite a bit
Yeah.
is, you know, occasionally I see a buddy's wife and I'm like, man, she is not my type. Won't use the word ugly, but I'll
That was,
not my
yeah.
type. Like,
Good wordsmith in there, Dan.
yeah, yeah. And I think to myself, I wonder, what
Yeah.
how he actually views her. Like if I say,
Yep.
hey, what do you think, of your wife's, beauty or looks or whatever? That's not a question I normally would ask, but
Right.
like I wonder what his response would be. You know, we put our mask up and we say whatever we say, but
Right.
this guy's point, which is a point that I've not brought up on the podcast before, is something, and it's something I want to talk about, was we can control our thoughts. And not
Yep.
only can we control our thoughts, in First Corinthians, it talks about pouring into our wife and
Yep.
building her confidence. And that is something we can control. That is our responsibility in order to grow in love with our wife. Our thoughts
Yep.
need to grow in love with our wife. So we've got to control those thoughts. So
Yep.
maybe you should answer that question. Is your wife ugly?
Oh, heck no. She's my
Oh, I wasn't asking you to answer it, but that's
oh
awesome
yeah,
that
yeah. No,
so
I'm
you're
sitting here. I
answering.
mean,
So go.
and my wife, and I'll even talk about my mom too. I mean, us men I think can realize that I think behind every successful guy is a fantastic woman, and so my wife is my rock, and so we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year, so we've been married for 20 years, which is crazy to think about. But I don't know where I'd be without her. She's, and I'll get a little vulnerable right now. I mean, so, in COVID, when was it? It was about 2 years ago. So it was after all the COVID kind of came and went and things were kind of opening back up. She got really sick and was in the hospital for uh, about a month right over Christmas.
Wow.
She was sick for about a month. She was in the hospital for about a week, but almost went into the ICU. I mean, it was pretty. Doctors have told her like they're surprised she came out of it. Um, Man, my faith was shaken. I mean, I was home with the boys, over the Christmas holidays, of course, as a Catholic. It's one of the best holidays, not only as a family and being able to spend it with family, but um, not to have her at home on Christmas Day was tough. Um, but I mean, I remember laying in bed praying, God, please, bring her home. And um, it was when she came home, it was, it changed everything, right? I mean, it opened my eyes that we only have, like I said, so many days here on earth that they can be taken from us pretty quickly, and especially our loved ones, that you got to live every day like it's your last. Um yeah, so it like I said, I mean, I took, and I, like I said, laying in bed praying, and if you just bring her home and get us through this, I'm everything's on you now. I'm putting everything in your hands now, God. So that's kind of where I don't know. I feel like my perspective changed for sure. I mean, my faith journey's been, I've been a Catholic all my life, but I think those the 7 days were tough, but um, it just I think that's a moment in time that I look back and I'm just like, holy moly, like he's got his hands in my life. So how do I, go forward and praise him in everything I do? So
When you look internally during that time frame, what was the worst moment? What were your like worst thoughts during that time?
it was, how am I going to do this without her? Raising kids and I just, I've had friends that have gone through divorces and, and of course I've had, loved ones that have passed away. And, um, I don't know if I'd be able to, it would have been a challenge. It would have been, I mean, I just couldn't imagine life without her, so, I mean, that was the hardest part. And like I said, just having those days of, especially around Christmas and stuff and not having her around the house was, and at home it was tough. Right. So, um, and then I would, I'd see my boys and they kind of knew what was going on, but I don't think they knew the severity of it. They're at that time they were 14, 15 years old and 9 or 10 years old. Um, so they were aware, but I don't think they were fully aware. And so I was just like watching them open presents or, watching them just kind of in the house, as I was kind of trying to keep the household together, um, was kind of like, I don't know what am I going to do about them? Like, I mean, just, I couldn't imagine being in their shoes too. Right. So it's, so yeah, so that was a time that was, you know, it was dark, but at the same time, it was eye opening, and
Hmm.
I think COVID for a lot of us has been that way, that, yeah, it was, a weird time and things shut down and, we couldn't go to schools, we couldn't go to work, took a lot of stuff away from a life perspective, but being at home with the family and friends and kind of not having sports and everything else to do, I think it was in my opinion, a little blessing in disguise, as well. But like I said, just having her away from the house, and talking about wives and stuff. And I think women are so important to us, and as husbands, it's our job to, so like you said, build them up and make sure their self confidence is as high as it can be. We've got to support them, and because I think they support us more than we realize most of the time. They're my wife works, she's part time and stuff, but she's home. Kids are home from school. She's home. Cooking dinner. I come home and dinner's either being prepared or on the table. I mean, it's just they
It
do
better
so much
be.
for us.
It better be.
Yeah, yeah, right. I do joke about that sometimes, but no,
I
we
joke
have a
about it
great
as well. We just
relationship.
had that the other day. My wife said something about dinner, and I,
Yeah,
just went over to put my hand on her shoulder, got close to her. I says, "Sweetie, honey, when have I ever? When was I said, when was the last time that I said, where's the dinner or the quality of the meal wasn't great?" I said,
yeah,
could you tell me?" And she goes, I know. You never say that. You never do that. Um, but I still feel guilty. I still feel guilty that,
yeah,
I didn't knock it out of the park tonight, or I haven't
right,
got it ready yet, or
yeah,
whatever. And like, one, it's not all your responsibility.
yeah, yeah,
All that stuff. But yeah, our wives have all this burden for all this unspoken expectations that they've got on themselves. So it's great to
right,
draw that out of them so
yeah,
that you can be more aware and be more helpful, or, take care of some things from time to
yeah,
time.
yeah. And I fall just as much as I don't, but probably more often than I don't. But not recognizing that and appreciating that enough and verbalizing that enough. I think I haven't read the book, the seven love languages and stuff, but
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I
Gary
think my
Chapman.
my wife's, she's one that likes the verbal affirmation and
So we had a
gratitude.
marriage counselor on, a Christian marriage counselor, and he's Gottman trained, John
Yep,
Gottman. And he talked about, it's either 5 or 7 compliments to a negative interaction that you've got to
yep,
have around your spouse, man or
right,
woman. So if you have reminders, if you track, if you pay attention to, and you look for ways to compliment, specifically, and like, how'd I do yesterday? Huh? Goose egg.
yeah, yeah,
So, look for those opportunities to let your wife know that you care about her. And 5 or 7 a day is a lot.
yeah,
Like, that feels like a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah,
But once you're doing 2, 3, 4, and you get consistent to that, you'll
yeah.
realize that it's a lot easier. Yeah, you
Kind of on
mentioned.
that too, just real quick. I mean, it's something that I've kind of found. I mean, you're talking about 5 to 7 could be a lot, but it could be as simple as a quick text message during the day, right? It doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
in person. It doesn't have to be verbal, like, words, talking, it can be the little moments like that that you can find that, can be a success that can usually go a little longer, further than you expect. I mean, I think just letting them know that you're thinking about them during the course of a day where you're, either at work or, at a soccer game and, they're off doing something else. I mean, it's just, I think sometimes that's all they want to know is that,
So here's an Android quick tip for you guys with Android. I don't know that Apple does this. I
yeah,
switched recently, so but in my old Android phone, I had a scheduled text message and I'd schedule multiple text messages out
interesting.
in the future. And after maybe a year and a half of this, I am riding in the car
Blocked you.
with my wife.
You did what?
I'm riding in the car with my wife
Uh,
and she gets a text message from me. And when I say riding, I mean driving. So I'm
yeah.
driving, she's passenger. She gets a text message from me, looks at her phone, looks at me, looks back at her phone, looks at me, and she goes, "Hey,
You got
what's this
caught.
about?" Do you
That's too
schedule
funny.
text messages to me?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's funny.
For how long?
Yeah.
Year and a half. It's like, that's not blah, blah, blah. I said, no. The thought behind it was intentional.
Yeah,
Like
right.
for me to have been this intentional about it, for this, like the method
Yeah,
isn't, the granted, is it a hack? Is it a short? Is it all that? Yes. However, I didn't want there to go a day that you didn't hear me tell you I love you. And we're away from each other for a lot of time.
yeah,
So I try to schedule these text messages at a time where we're normally away from each other.
yeah,
And therefore you knew I was thinking of you. And when you replied to that text, if I wasn't thinking about you, I certainly was when you replied. Like
yeah.
there's a system to this. So she laughed and she's like, okay, well that is pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
Now
That's
I
funny.
switch phones and I don't know how to do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if Apple. I don't know. I've got an iPhone too. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the scheduled text function,
Yeah,
but
it's the one
that's a good
feature that I
story though.
miss from Android between the two.
Yeah,
So good. We answered the question, is your wife ugly? She's beautiful, so that's good. Oh my gosh. You talked also a little bit about it, made me think about um, do we give big speeches or do we go deep? Do we focus on lots of people or do we focus on a few? Uh, Before we started this, you said something about uh, and during the podcast, you also talked about reaching out to people close to you, and uh,
mhm,
you're responsible for helping your kids get to heaven. You talked about the individual operators at your different locations. And before we were recording, you talked about Jesus, and he had 12 guys that he poured into.
yeah,
And of those 12, he had three that he really poured into.
right.
So think through who those people are in your life, whether it's the hundreds or the thousands, your social media stuff, or you think through your closer relationships that you have, and who are you intentionally influencing? Who are you spending intentional time with, intentional thought with?
Mhm.
Who are the ones that you're asking questions of, that you're holding accountable? That song, Dear Younger Me, I don't know if you've heard that one or not.
Yeah, no, I'd have to look
Yeah,
it up.
yeah. It's a
Okay.
super cool song, but it talks
Yeah.
about, you know, I'm stepping into, some kids to have a talk with them. I've got some time with them.
Hmm.
Do I just give them a big speech? And if so, what do I talk about? Or do I back up and go deep with them
Yeah.
and get to know them on their side and what they're going through, and go that direction with them?
Mhm.
And, the song's Dear Younger Me. If I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, reflecting back, man, my life would be different if I
Yeah.
knew then
I was like, it's funny
what
you
I
say that.
know now.
I was listening to a podcast the other day. It's a daily rosary podcast. It's actually a guy out of Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, and I think I forget the name of it, and I can share it with you, Dan, later. But anyway, his reflection a few days ago was, talking about, this this mindset. You were talking about the major league ball player, right?
Yeah.
That this mindset of, I wish I would have, or I should have done this, or I wish, or I wish this person would have, responded this way in a conversation, kind of these should haves that are fantasy worlds, right? But the best line that he used in that meditation was, you're, you're shitting all over yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Yes.
talks about a story where he was saying this to a priest during confession, and the priest's response to him was, "You're shitting all over yourself." Don't you know? So it's this expectation that we have of living kind of in the past, or reflecting and thinking about, oh, I could have done this better, I should have done this better, or she or he could have done this better. Um, it's all fantasy expectations, right? Because it that's not how it was. It wasn't real, so you can't control that, right? So I think, to the point of, controlling only what you can control, is, you know things are going to happen, but I think most importantly, it's what's our response to those things, and how can we continue to improve on those, right?
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
but yeah, to the point about, but it goes back to the Mother Teresa quote and everything from earlier, that I think about, Jesus and his apostles and disciples, and his 12, his guides, his crew that he hung around with and traveled, 10 miles in either direction. But
Yeah.
his, Jesus, when he came on earth for 33 years, didn't go to different continents. He didn't go all across the world with his message. His mission for 33 years was to pour into these guys that surrounded him, uh, and then let them do the work, but really kind of just, he did what he could in his world and his control, and then, and look where we are today with what he started then. So I think we can take a little component from that as well, and think, who's the crew that we can pour into, as men, and help hold accountable, like you said, or even have them help us be accountable, and point out when we're, in the wrong, or not
100%.
staying on the straight and narrow. um I think, and that's where church and community, family can be the foundation. It's, I've got a Saturday morning prayer group that I meet with. It's like 10 or 11 guys, and yeah, 5 guys might show up one week, but then, we might have 11 the next week. I mean, just depending on responsibilities. But we've been doing it for about a year and a half, kind of right out of COVID, and maybe even a little bit before then. But those guys have, the relationships that we've built, together, um, and being able to have great conversations. We'll do a daily reading and reflect on it, but then it's, as dads and husbands, how are we, what's going on in our lives, and how do we, hold each other accountable to the roles and responsibilities that we have. So I think that's what's great about, having the community of the church around us, and the neighborhoods, and, is, I think, kind of going back to kind of the smaller, environment of, having that key group of men that can hold us accountable. So
Yeah, control, you can control your thoughts, your actions, your words. So
yeah,
things along the lines of I coach a couple softball teams, and girls like, I'm gonna get up there, and I'm not gonna strike out.
yeah.
Okay. What are you gonna do?
Right.
The best player on the team, she says, Coach, I'm gonna strike out this time. And she's getting ready to walk up to bat.
Yeah.
And I said, Sweetie, I believe in you. You are gonna strike out. No, coach, no, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to
Yeah.
say that. And she stops and she goes, Oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm not supposed to think that. I've got to change my thoughts. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Right on, girl. Thanks for listening to my coaching. And she's like, I can control what I think. I'm going to swing at strikes, and I'm going to smash the ball. That's what I'm going to do up at bat. Sure
Yep.
enough, she hit a home run,
Yeah.
but it was control what we can control. So when our thoughts go to places such as, how in the world, God, am I in my own power going to run this family without my wife?
Yeah.
How in the heck am I going to be able to do this? Heck of a question,
Yeah.
but it sends you into a black hole.
Yeah. Because that wasn't reality, right? I mean, it's So yeah, it's this, when we're always kind of thinking forward or thinking backwards, it's those things you can't control. You can only right now, the moments we're in right now, is what we can. So, um, and having said that though, I do think, thinking backwards, and, I always, when I talk to the team members, or even, my sons, when mistakes happen, is mistakes are going to happen. You got to accept that. The question is, are you going to learn from them and not repeat them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I look at mistakes as lessons learned, in my mind. So I think that's in my, same thing, right? It's what's that thought, in your head, in terms of, it's not, oh man, I can't believe I made that mistake, or, I should have done this, or I should have done that, or she or he could have done this and that wouldn't have happened. I mean, again, all fantasy, so
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's just self-reflection. I think you had mentioned, I think earlier in the podcast, kind of that, doing kind of a daily, reflection of kind of
Yeah.
how the day went, and what mistakes did you make? What didn't you do? What did you do? All those things that I think it's good to do those, almost every night, of kind of reflecting back, and how your life was, and, how involved was Jesus and God in those decisions that you were
Yes.
making. Did you lean on him to maybe reflect on what the best approach was? I think those are all things that we can do.
I also had a spot where my wife almost died.
Yeah.
My second daughter was being born, and all of a sudden in the delivery room,
Mm,
the nurses start freaking out. The doctor, who's a friend of mine, starts
yeah.
freaking out. We were just shoulder to shoulder joking and laughing together,
Yeah.
and everybody got silent. And then out of nowhere, I hear, "Get the dad out of here."
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't because they needed me out, because I was causing problems. It was because they just needed me out. They needed
Yeah.
to do emergency surgery and save my wife's life. And as soon as that happened, I was gone.
Yeah.
They took the baby out of my arms, took my daughter Emmy out of my arms, and I just left. I was gone.
Yeah.
I tried to figure out where our original room was in this whole hospital. I didn't really care where it was. Didn't know that
Yeah.
I needed to know. I figured they'd take me back there, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And hours later, the doctor catches up with me and walks in the room, and I'm down on my, hands and knees at 6 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
praying. And he
Yeah.
goes, "Hey, where you been?" I say, "Hey, doc, I've been right here." This is, when you say right here, do you mean right here? Like in that position? I said, "Yeah, I was looking all over the place for a cross and I couldn't find one."
Yeah.
And he says, "Yeah, in this hospital, there actually aren't any crosses." He says, "So what'd you do?" I said, "Well, I heard get the dad out of here." So and one, I don't know anything about medicine or medical or blah, blah, blah. So I can't control that. I
Yeah.
can only get in the way. So, I did all I could do. I found a place that I could be alone and I could pray. I said, "That's something I can control. That is something I can do. That is the only solution I could come up with to help."
Yeah.
And I didn't want to wake anybody up at 4 o'clock in the morning by calling everybody.
Right.
But, I could call on Jesus, call on God, and say, "Hey, I could use some help here."
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tears that you were shedding earlier, I was absolutely shedding them in that moment. And
I'm sure. Yeah.
um, the thought crept in that, oh my gosh, how am I going to raise a newborn baby by myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was also comforted. Like,
Right.
that's
Right.
that thought isn't productive right now. Let's get
Yeah.
right back to praying. And so yeah, the doctor came in and we talked for a bit, and he says, "I've never seen anybody do this. I've never seen a husband do, like, are you for real?" I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"I'm telling you, man." And the doctor's Christian also, but he's like, "I've just never seen this level of faith or this level of, belief." Or,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "This isn't for you." Again, this was
Yeah.
the only thing I could come up with to be helpful in the situation. And, um, you know, God throws
Right.
things to
Yeah.
us so that we can do something with it. You mentioned your 16-year-old got his license. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're like, "I
Yeah.
pray a little bit more these days."
Yeah. A lot more
And you
praying
laughed,
going
but I
on.
was like, "No, absolutely. You pray a whole heck of a lot more."
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's yeah, as a dad, as a business owner, all those things as a, all the roles that we fill as a coach, right? There's moments where you're going to feel helpless and hopeless too, right? And we were,
Oh,
as you were just
absolutely.
talking about, and as I shared earlier, I mean, I think at that moment is, the only thing you can do is sometimes just bow your head and, have a conversation, have a real conversation. And I
Mhm.
think that's all he wants out of us, really, to be honest, is just those moments where you just have a conversation with him.
Yep.
And it's, a good friend of mine who's a priest, having a lot of conversations with him over the years is that's all, having that, he's a friendship, how would you talk to a buddy, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
really all he's looking for, in terms of, what he wants out of us. So the moments that we need that or want to have that is something I think we got to recognize. And it's a lot more times during the day, I think, than we all realize, right? So and like I said, I'm at fault many times. So it's uh you know I think those moments when those, times happen, or things happen throughout the day that you just don't know where to turn. I mean, that's where I find myself turning most of the time. So
So we always close the podcast out with any final thoughts that you've got. I'll say a short story so you can come up with something.
sure.
And also, if you've got a challenge that you can issue the guys, something they can do week to week, something that'll help them become better dads, better leaders, better Christians, better whatever, but something that'll help them improve who they are as a person. I'd love for you to throw something out. If you don't have something, I'll come up with something. So while you're thinking, here's the funny story you made me think of. So you talked about having a priest buddy that you can talk to and get some counsel from. So same thing with a pastor or respected guy at your church, or just a respected Christian guy that holds true. So there's a guy named Mark Wahlberg. You guys may have heard of him before. Back in the day, he was also known as Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. So Mark Wahlberg runs every movie script that he's considering by his priest. And a funny one that he turned down because his priest told him to turn it down. I kid you not, Brokeback Mountain.
Wow. Okay.
So Marky Mark was originally cast to be in Brokeback Mountain and he turned it down.
That's funny. I'm surprised the priest approved Ted. I've never seen that movie, but I don't think I think that stuffed animal says some crude stuff in that movie.
That stuffed animal does. That stuffed
Yeah,
animal
but maybe
does.
maybe because Marky Mark didn't have to say any of those lines, maybe that's why the priest kind of approved it. But
Yeah,
that's
apparently that's that. I saw that movie and I don't remember the stuffed animal ever laying with another male stuffed animal.
uh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of think through, your question, earlier. I mean, to me, and kind of a theme that for the last couple of years, as I shared, with my wife, when she was sick and stuff, is I think as men, and you hear this a lot too, as men are kind of lone wolves sometimes, right? That they want to do it on their own, take on the entire world or the responsibility on their own without, I don't need anybody else to, be a part of, what I'm trying to accomplish. Um, I think that's, I think that's a bit of a stereotype, but I also think and then I would challenge, you know, every man out there to, lean into a group, find a key group of, it could be one or two guys, it could be six or seven, but, find that core group of guys that, you can rely on, that not only can you go to them when you need support or you need help or need assistance, but guys that'll hold you accountable when maybe you're getting off the path, um, and I think that's something, especially as dads, that I think for us to just be that example for our kids, you know, because as a dad, you feel like sometimes it's always on you, but um, there's plenty of resources out there, but also you've got a partner in crime, typically in your wife, right? So lean into that wife, as much as you need to, in support of raising your boys and kids. but also, like I said, just finding a core group of guys to challenge you and keep you challenged. I think is an important piece of living in a successful life, and um, so yeah, that would be my
That's a great challenge. So
yeah,
to sum that challenge up, guys, he mentioned find a guy or a couple guys or a group. So you might not be able to accomplish that in 1 week. You
yeah,
literally might not be able to accomplish that. What you can accomplish, what you can control is, did you ask around?
yeah,
Did you start the process?
yeah,
So if you thought, where am I going to find that? Great starting point. Could be a defeating starting point, but the small step is to ask somebody a question.
mhm,
Hey, who do you guys talk to? Who do you talk to? Hey, what groups do you hang around? Who helps you become better? And then for the guys that are like, I don't need to do that one, I'm good. Perfect. I'm glad you're that guy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, it's great that you've got somebody around or a group surrounding you. Like, Tom doesn't need to accept that challenge. He's like, I'm good. Like, I got this Saturday group, like 5 to 11 guys show up every week. Like, we're
mhm,
we're good. So the challenge I'd throw back to Tom is, who else can he include? Who
yeah,
can he stick his hand out to and give a hand up to? So I would be in that same category. I'm like, dude, man, I'm good. I've got some guys and I've got a group and I'm good. I got this podcast. I got the community. I'm good. Well, who else can I give a hand up to and lift them out from wherever they are and say, hey, uh, just a couple days ago, I had a guy invited some people over. Corey Carlson was over at my house, and I didn't know the guy very well, but I thought it seems like he could use a friend. And out of that group, he kept looking at his watch like relentlessly, and I think he realized that it was about time for this little gathering to be over. And he goes, "Guys, not to bring this party down, but my ex-wife lost all contact through the courts with my daughter." And that was 3 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, my daughter tried to commit suicide because she was so depressed. She was grieving from losing the relationship with her mom. Her mom has major issues. So there's absolute reason why they should be separated. But he hadn't told people about that.
yeah,
He just needed to get it off his chest. And it was a safe space where he could talk. And since that time, I've connected him to a few guys in a group, and he's like really excited about life and not fearful anymore, and making some really, really good steps for himself and for his daughter. But who out there could you give a hand up to? So I love the challenge. That is a fantastic challenge.
yeah. And I love what you said about breaking it down to reaching out to a guy maybe you haven't talked to in a while, right? A good friend from college or high school or whatever season that you are in life is, who's a guy that I maybe had a relationship with that I haven't talked to in a while, and maybe just a quick text of, hey Jim, been thinking about you, what's new, or let's grab
Yeah,
lunch, let's grab a drink, whatever it is. I mean, I think even just those little reach outs like that, just if somebody that needs to know that you're thinking about them or knows that you're thinking about them, I think that can do a lot for somebody. So yeah, I think like you said, breaking it down to a weekly challenge or a challenge for the week. I think, who are the guys in your life that maybe you haven't talked to in a while that you can reconnect with and maybe start a conversation with. So
yep,
great.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
if you need a haircut, and maybe your buddy needs a haircut, maybe your local barbershop has a cool community thing and maybe serve some beers where you could hang out together, play some checkers, swap some stories, and get your ears lowered.
that's right. That's right.
So thankfully here in the St. Louis area, we've got the Hair Saloon for Men, which is exactly that kind of place. But hopefully you've got a place where you guys can connect as well with your buddies and be a proactive environment that allows you to get that stuff off your chest and be a good listener for other guys that need that community around. So
For
Tom,
sure.
thank you so much for coming on. It's been years in the making, and we
Yep.
finally
No,
finally
I'm
got
glad,
this
man. No,
one
I
in.
appreciate
And
it.
kind of a perfect timing for it. So thank you again. And reminded me I need my haircut. I'll be down.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it looks good to me from here, so all good. I'll let the professionals handle that though. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right,
All
Dan.
right,
Thanks.
guys. Thanks for listening again this week. Look forward to you guys checking out next week's episode and share with your buddies. Catch you later.